The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor, your host. And today we have a very special interview from the Friendship Circle of Wisconsin. And we have Levi Stein here on the line. And a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine invited me to a fundraiser. And there's a little cafe. It's up in Wisconsin. And it helps people with special needs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Lay-Vee, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell everyone who's listening, how did you help people throughout the country? Take it away.
So the Friendship Circle originally started in Detroit, Michigan, which is where I was born and raised, after a young adult, Daniel Sobel, died by suicide. And his family wanted to start an organization that would give people an alternate door to open. When someone is going through a challenging time, a mental illness, an addiction of some sort, they often are isolated and away from all the people that they maybe used to be close with, and giving them a place that they can come into, a circle of friendship that doesn't judge them for their challenges, but judges them for their abilities, is really what Friendship Circle is all about. So at the very beginning, Friendship Circle in Detroit was working primarily with people struggling with addictions. And later, it moved into the field of disabilities, where people with disabilities who maybe were isolated were able to have a friend. So one of the early programs that started in the late 90s was Friends at Home, where teen volunteers visit the homes of kids with disabilities. So myself, growing up in high school, I volunteered as a part of that program, and it gave me the friend that I didn't have. It gave me someone who loved me no matter what fashion trend I was going by or not going by. And it was, my friend didn't care about any of the social pressures or dramas that were going on in the school system. They just cared that a friend was coming to give them attention, to be a kid together with them. And that was it. And that made a life-changing impact on me. And it's an opportunity that I hope everyone has. And so Friendship Circle to me was something that I was involved with my whole life. And when the opportunity of moving to Milwaukee to run Friendship Circle here came up, I jumped at the opportunity. And now we've been here since August of 2016, so 7.5 years. And we have our own, version of the way the organization trended towards based on the needs of our Milwaukee community. But it's ultimately doing the same thing and providing opportunities of friendship, opportunities of inclusion, opportunities for children and adults to be a part of society in the way they deserve and have the right to be. So that's my story in a very short nutshell.
So when you were a teenager and you would go and hang out with your friend, what did you guys do? Just play video games, play baseball, hang out, talk about girls? I mean, I may have made that up, but what were the activities?
We did the typical things. It was usually just playing games, playing sports, playing board games, soccer, chess. The friend that I went to visit, he liked to do pottery, so we did that sometimes. Just typical things, nothing too... The amazing part was there was no judgment. It was just having some time together.
Awesome. So you're part of the Lubavitch movement, which is a sect of Orthodox Judaism. Can you explain a little bit about what the Lubavitchers do as far as community outreach and traveling across the world and that type of thing?
Chabad or Lubavitch represents the same organization, two different names for the same organization, and it has centers all over the world. And the purpose of the organization is really to give opportunities for people, especially people within the Jewish community, to have opportunities to be proud of who they are and to learn more about their Judaism and to have opportunities to get involved and practice and learn more. Friendship Circle is a division of the Lubavitch organization and focuses on isolated parts of the community to make sure they are definitely getting the same love, care, and attention that the general community is getting. And we do it through programming, the way that Friendship Circle does it. And if someone wants to get more involved or attend a synagogue, there are always other Chabad institutions around the state or the country or the world that they can get involved in.
So one of the things I'm looking at in your bio is prior to founding the Friendship Circle of Wisconsin, you were actually formed one in Puerto Rico. Can you tell everyone about that?
Sure. So shortly after we got married, which was exactly 14 years ago, almost to the day, we moved to Puerto Rico. It's San Juan, Puerto Rico. We did start and run Friendship Circle there for the almost 5 years that we were living there. 2 of our children were born there. And ultimately, we wanted to settle in Milwaukee. In Puerto Rico, we were working under a larger Chabad organization, and it's a small island. So we were happy to settle in a city where our kids could have a much bigger community to grow up in. And it gives us the wings to grow as much as we possibly can. But we grew a lot in Puerto Rico. We loved it there. We loved the community there, and it made us who we are today.
Lay-Vee, I'm going to tease you a little bit. Why would you move to Milwaukee with the weather when you had perfect weather? I'm teasing. I'm just giving you a hard time.
So, first of all, if you could compare the beaches of San Juan to the beaches of Lake Michigan, I'll pick Lake Michigan. But on a real note, visiting Puerto Rico is a beautiful place to visit, but living there, all year is not the same experience. And especially when you start raising children, you have kids that want to have friends, especially they want to have Jewish friends. It's a different challenge, and it's a different kind of life. And while we were ready to do that there, without a doubt, it's definitely a much more family-oriented place to live here from a Jewish community's perspective. And it's much more affordable to live here. In Puerto Rico, everything had to get shipped in. We wanted kosher meat, we had to ship it in. We wanted really anything, even cars have to get shipped into the island. So electricity is very expensive. The weather, hurricane weather, we've been through a lot of hurricanes. That's not easy. So life is far from simple. There's a lot of people that are struggling on the island, and in Milwaukee, it's a much more stable place in terms of weather as well. And from my wife's perspective, being able to do your hair in the morning and it not get boiling hot every day is nice too.
As much as I just teased you, I also prefer the beaches of Lake Michigan. I prefer fresh to salt water any day. So I totally agree with you. I was only teasing you. In your background on the website, it says that you are a licensed Safe Talk suicide prevention trainer. Can you talk about that program and mental health, suicide prevention, and the type of training that you are involved in?
Sure. So as you heard at the beginning, that the origin of Friendship Circle started after a young adult died by suicide. And mental health was always a part of its core mission. It's about including people who are otherwise isolated and need to feel included. So while the programming of Friendship Circle at the beginning weren't titled mental health programming, it still was always a part of its mission and in its core of who we were. What happened during COVID is it brought out the mental health side of our society in a really bad way. And people were really struggling all around us. We had several people within Friendship Circle who attempted suicide, and several people in our community who died by suicide over the last couple of years, even as recently as a few weeks ago. So the crisis really became front and center, and we had to do something about it right away. So the first thing that we did was I became a licensed instructor for Safe Talk, which is a 4-hour in-person suicide prevention training, which from the 3 levels of trainings, there's like these 1-hour trainings, there's the Safe Talk training, and then there's 2-day training. I found it to be the most effective way to reach the most amount of people in a format that gives you enough information to really save lives. So not to say anything wrong with the 1-hour trainings, those are great awareness and beautiful programs, but when you don't have enough time to really practice and role play and really, get that information. I've heard so many people tell me, like, I know I'm supposed to ask about suicide right now, I just don't have the guts to do it. And Safe Talk gives you those tools to make sure you have what it takes, not just to ask the question, but to connect the person to proper help and how that whole process happens. So as I got more into the mental health field, it really opened up, and I saw the need was really coming out of all sides. And after that, we started a teen mental health committee, and we started teen mental health support groups. We started a mom support group, a grief support group. And recently, as a few weeks ago, we did an event called One Thing I Wish You Knew, which was a teen mental health TED Talk style event. And we had close to 500 people attend in person. And it was a very, very well attended and beautiful event. And people really shared their stories. And it gave other teens peer support. It gave stakeholders and educators the opportunity to see what the needs really are. It helped break the stigma. It gave the media an opportunity to talk about the mental health crisis, and overall, really just brought us forward a little bit more than we were before. So Safe Talk training is a program. The beauty of it is it doesn't just save lives, but I can bring the program really anywhere around the state. I even trained, if you're talking Chicago, I trained the fire departments of Chicago several times. So it's a training that could go anywhere, and it statistically will save a life within 90 days of every training that's given to 30 people. So it's just like you have a heart defibrillator in your community center, you have to have the tools to save people's lives when they're having thoughts of suicide.
So how does somebody find a suicide prevention counselor? There's the whole 988 phone number that's now a national system where if somebody's having a rough day, psychological emergency or grief, they can call this number and get help. How do these people find you or the people involved in the Safe Talk program?
So Safe Talk is authored by Living Works. They're the author of the training, and they are now in pretty much definitely every state and many countries around the world. It's one of the leading trainings that's out there. So when you go on their website, you can look up for a training near you and get it that way. Obviously, you can reach out to the Friendship Circle, and we're happy to connect you. But most importantly, every city has organizations and resources, and this is something we talk about in the training, and we actually teach you how to find the resources and give you a whole sample of resources. And the resources are out there. People just need to know how to get to them and know how to connect to them. And 988 can do that too. One of the things that they're trained at is how to look up resources in your area, find trainings in your area, and connect you.
Okay, very good, very good. But how does a person? How do you happen upon a person who may be going through these thoughts? Do they reach out to you, or is there a...
Yeah, you have to take the training to learn how to identify those thoughts, right? We're not mind readers, but we become a little bit more sensitive to body language and to change of behavior. And when someone has a change of behavior and you want to know what's going on, it's very difficult to know if you don't talk to them about it. And if those signs or invitations, as we call it in the training, stick around, you have to ask them if they're having thoughts of suicide. And leading to that question is a very part of finding out if a person is in crisis or not.
Got it. So this is for, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so if I'm incorrect, please correct me. So this would be for like community activities. You're a leader in a community activity or a community center, and that's how you would identify people. Is that correct?
Any person that is around any other person can identify someone with thoughts of suicide. 20% of our population will have thoughts of suicide at some point in their life. So this is happening all around us. In the state of Wisconsin, there are an average of 3 people that die by suicide every day. I don't know the statistics in Illinois, but it's a crisis. There are hundreds of people dying every day in our nation just by suicide. And for people ages 10 to 24, it's the second leading cause of death. So this is a real crisis. We can all learn to be sensitive, and we can all train ourselves in how to identify people with thoughts of suicide by taking this training. And this training can come to you. So if you're a teacher in a school, especially a high school, it's primarily for ages 15 and up. So all high schools should teach this to their students. I've done it in many high schools, and I'm happy to come to more high schools. All businesses should have their staff as a professional development day take this training. All community centers should offer it to their communities. And the more Safe Talk trained people we get, the more lives will be saved.
Your profile also says that you're on the board of directors of the ADRC, Milwaukee County. What is the ADRC? It's Rabbinical Council, I think.
Not quite. ADRC is the Aging and Disability Resource Center. It is the government agency of Milwaukee County that provides resources for aging and disabilities, which includes mental health, which really fits the work that I do because I work with disabilities and mental health. So I'm able to see and understand what the government is doing, what resources are out there, and I'm able to be a better resource when people come to me. So that's what the ADRC is. Every county in the state of Wisconsin has an ADRC.
Ah, very good. And I know what this is, and I've participated in an Illinois chapter, but can you talk about what NAMI is and what your involvement with NAMI is?
So NAMI stands for the National Alliance for Mental Illness and is one of the leading nonprofits that provide resources for people struggling with mental health or mental illness. The reason why I got involved originally, I've been involved with them a little bit for a very long time, but when I started doing Safe Talk, people started telling me, oh, why don't you just, doesn't NAMI do that? Or why don't you just go to NAMI? Why do you need to do it? So I looked into what NAMI does, and NAMI does a lot of incredible work, but they weren't doing this. So I decided to get involved in NAMI because NAMI, it could be a place that I refer people to. I don't provide really any of the resources that NAMI does. So it really fit hand in hand. And they have lots of different types of support groups and support systems. They do a lot of training for first responders, which I'm one of their presenters now. And when a NAMI needs a suicide prevention training, they'll call me and I'll deliver it for that NAMI chapter. So I'm happy to do that for any NAMI around the state. And it just, again, connects me to resources. It allows the knowledge that I have from all the work that I'm doing to be a resource to them. And together, hopefully make a little bit more of a difference. In Wisconsin, NAMI has 25 or 26 chapters covering almost every county in the state. And it really is doing incredible work.
Fantastic. And can you give a little bit of, I was at the cafe, whenever it was, a couple weeks ago. Can you give a description of what the cafe is, the art studio, and the other activities that you have at the Friendship Circle in Wisconsin?
Sure. So before we had our space that we have now in Fox Point, we were doing programming, social and recreational and life skills programming for kids and adults with disabilities. So let's say we were doing a sports night and we did, or let's say Taekwondo that we did and we just rented out a room somewhere in a school and we called it for 6 o'clock and everyone showed up at 5 o'clock. And I wasn't used to that. Growing up in the Jewish community, people usually came late, not an hour early. And I thought, maybe 6 o'clock is very late and we should call it for 5. So we called an event for 5 and a lot of people showed up at 4. And I started wondering what's going on. This is so nice, but it's really early. And we learned that most of the adults with disabilities that were coming to events at the time were not employed. And we're like, why not? These are very capable, highly skilled people that maybe need support in one area, but can be incredibly resourceful in other areas. And I looked into it and realized and learned that 80% of adults with disabilities are unemployed, and many of them should have the opportunity to work. So that's how the Friendship Bakery opened up. Our first version of it started in 2017, and we started a bakery and we employed people with disabilities and tried to prepare them for the working world. What that turned into, as it started to grow and be successful, is we opened a coffee shop, a bakery, and an art studio in a brick and mortar location in the shopping center, something that the whole community can participate in and that connects the two parts, the people with disabilities with the community, and it prepares our people with disabilities for the workplace. So we have a 6 to 12 month training program. And when they graduate from the training program, we partnered with what we call our PI program, which stands for Partners in Inclusive Employment. We have 50 local businesses that are committed to hiring our graduates. They don't have to hire anyone specifically, but they're committed to entertaining the idea and to be supportive if they do. And they make a series of commitments to us that they're going to treat them fairly, pay them fairly, seek out help if they're struggling with a disability so they don't get fired for their disability. They can get fired if it's not working out, but not because they didn't do anything about it. So it's turned into a really successful program, both for people with disabilities, and the bonus is we have a cafe that anyone can walk into. We're open from 6:30 to 5 pretty much every day besides Saturday. And you can get served yummy food, yummy coffee. It's a kosher cafe, one of the only ones in the area. And come on over.
And I ate there, and he's right. The food is spectacular. The service is good. It was a phenomenal experience. And I appreciate everything that you've done. The Friendship Circle website is fcwi.org, which stands for friendshipcirclewisconsin.org. There's a ton of information on there. And if you look at In the News, there's a tab under About that says In the News. There is a ton of news stories about teen suicide prevention, teen speakers on mental health. And it's a phenomenal resource for people who are struggling. And one of the things that you said earlier, Lay-Vee, is that you said that the mental health crisis coming out of the pandemic was I'm going to put a word in your mouth, was bad or horrible. And I agree with you, but at the same time, it shed a lot of light on it and really allowed people to help others. So there is a silver lining there. It's unfortunate the adversity had to, create good deeds, but it did, and you're able to save lives, and it's absolutely fabulous. Can you talk about the grief groups? Because mental health is not about people who have disabilities. It's not about only people who are struggling permanently, but life is a roller coaster. It goes up and down. There's deaths, there's divorces, and people go through grief, and some of it is temporary. So can you expand upon the grief groups that you have?
So Friendship Circle really is about friendship, right? It's not about a specific type of disability. It's not like, we're only talking to you if you have Down syndrome or if you have autism. We're here to give people a community of acceptance and inclusion, no matter what the reason or cause for your isolation is, right? So it could be addiction, it could be mental illness. That's number one. Number two is mental illness is a disability. And we're going to develop programs based on the needs of our community. And if we see that right now there's a need for a grief support group or a teen mental health support group or a mom support group, then those are the programs we're going to focus on, which coming out of COVID, that became more important than before COVID. Or maybe before COVID, they were differently. This is what's important now. And that's okay if some programs go away and other programs kind of take the attention. The hard part is when nothing goes away and it just keeps growing, because then we really need the community support to keep it all running. But it changes lives. I mean, I can give you an example. One of our teen mental health support groups we had. So me putting on my PR hat, I always like to tell people to bring more people next time, right? Even though I probably shouldn't have done this, but I went around the room asking everyone to bring a friend to the next one. And I just I pointed to each person. I said, are you comfortable bringing a friend to the next support group? And everyone was saying yes. And all of a sudden, one person said, I don't have any friends to bring, or I don't have any friends. And as soon as that person said that, this is a teenager, a senior in high school, someone else said, well, you and I go to the same school, so where do you sit by lunch? Or she's like, oh, I don't really have a place. She's like, why don't you come sit by us and I'll introduce you to all my friends? And she said, okay. And I thought that was beautiful at the time, but I didn't think too much into it until her mother called me the next day in tears saying that you don't realize this, but we moved to Wisconsin about 6-7 months ago. And my daughter has been going to school for these past 6 months. And today is the first time that she went into the lunchroom. And she admitted to me now that she was having thoughts of suicide for a long time. And when this person introduced her to her group of friends, she now feels like she has more potential and she has a network that she can tap into and a reason to live. So that was an example of something that came out of a support group that wasn't even its intended outcome necessarily directly, but it really has amazing, amazing support for people. I know another support group we had also for teens, which was before finals, and everyone put their phone number in a hat, like on a piece of paper, and they all switched it up, and everyone got a different person's phone number, and they're all going to check in on each other to make sure they're studying for their exams, and if they need support or if they need help, and they'll help each other get through that really stressful week. So we focus a lot on that. We know it helps not just literally save lives, but also gives people support during difficult times, during stressful times. And for that, they can be more functional in society, they can do better in school, and they can have the support that they need. The grief support group, particularly, we partner with Jewish Family Services, and they staffed a social worker to help run that, and we hosted it at Friendship Circle. And there's also, especially at the beginning of COVID, when a lot of people lost loved ones to COVID, it was a really important support group that went on for a long time.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.